Are you saying, Arnie, that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission gave the 20-year extension to Vermont Yankee according to 1972 standards?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's shocking, and let's all wake up, people who are watching this, that that so much more has been learned in the 40 years, and still they gave the approval. So please call in 802-862-3966. We have Arnie Gundersen here, the Chief Engineer for Fairewinds Energy Education.
You know, on your point there about the standard, yeah, Vermont Yankee was built to 1972 standards, and the NRC just relicensed it to those same standards on the theory that if you have a 1972 car, you can continue to meet the standards. You don't have to add extra brakes or extra seat belts or whatever. If it was licensed in 72, it can be driven on the roads today. The problem with that argument is that Vermont Yankee changed its internals dramatically when they got this power increase. And the NRC allowed them to increase the power, but didn't require them to meet new standards. So they had it both ways. They got the best of both worlds. They got the old standards and the new power. And that's sort of a typical way that the commission runs. It's a ratchet that only turns one way. And when you tell a utility like Vermont Yankee that they have to build to a newer standard, they say, whoa, they call it grandfathered. We were grandfathered in.
So these are the lessons that we have not learned worldwide from the...
Well, that's one, and I'm glad to see that the New York Times is talking about, Chair McFarland saying we need to look again at the seismic issue. The biggest one that's right on our doorstep is the nuclear fuel that's stored up on top of these buildings like Vermont Yankee. There's 23 Mark I reactors. That's the kind that blew up at Fukushima. But there's 23 of them in the United States, almost the identical design. And at the very top, in that box that sits up in the air, at the very top of that is the nuclear fuel pool. And we've got so much nuclear fuel in those pools that it equals the equivalent of more than all of the bombs that were dropped in all of the above-ground testing. 700 nuclear bombs blew up. There's more cesium in the fuel pool at Vermont Yankee than in all those above-ground tests over 30 years. And we tolerate it. There's a solution. There's a solution. You can take it and put it on the ground in something called dry casks. But Vermont Yankee and the other 23 utilities don't want to spend the money and are keeping that fuel in a very precarious place.
Viewers, we're going to take our first call.
No.
Okay. No, we don't have a call. Okay. I'm sorry. Well, Arnie, you were on a jaw-dropping point, and I'm sorry that I deflected the interest away from that right now about all of the fuel supply. Yeah. And what is in that fuel supply for people who are not?
Well, the nuclear reactor's got the hottest nuclear fuel, but after 4 years it burns out and it has to be removed, and it's put next to the reactor in a deep blue swimming pool, huge swimming pool. And it has to stay cooled for 5 years, and it has to be protected by the water for 30 years. So there's a solution, though. It doesn't have to stay up on the roof, called dry cask storage. The fuel can be taken out and put into canisters and then lowered to the ground and set on the ground. Fukushima had those, and Fukushima, those survived the tsunami and the earthquake just fine, but the building didn't. So the lesson that we haven't learned from Fukushima is to get that fuel out of the fuel pool at Vermont Yankee and at 23 other nuclear sites around the country, get it on the ground where it would be much safer.
Okay. Thank you, Arnie. Now we're going to take the call on here. Okay. You're on the air. Hello.
Oh. My name's Greg from Burlington, and my question is, well, wasn't the Yucca Mountain storage facility in Nevada that the taxpayers spent billions of dollars building supposed to take care of the storage problems? And why is it now that Nevada's being allowed to say that after we brought all those jobs and spent all that money that they don't want the fuel now?
Okay. Yeah, Greg was your name?
Yep.
Hey, nice. Thank you for calling. Yeah, Yucca Mountain was the chosen site, but not by scientists, by Congress. Yucca Mountain was called the bill that went through Congress to establish the Yucca Mountain site was called the Screw Nevada Act, and basically 49 states didn't want it. Nevada didn't have much of a population and very little clout in Congress, and so they gave it to Nevada in the Screw Nevada Act. Yucca Mountain wasn't cited scientifically, it was cited politically. So now, after 20 years of drilling and problems with the mountain, the congressional delegation in Nevada includes a guy named Harry Reid who runs Congress, but two, the science of Yucca Mountain is showing that, in fact, it's not as seismically stable as people hoped, and there's water in the rock that nobody ever accounted for. So for 20 years, we've been investigating Yucca Mountain on the Screw Nevada bill because nobody else wanted it, but not because it was scientifically best. And on top of that, there were the political pressures from Senator Harry Reid. So when President Obama was elected, he said, no, we're going to choose a site scientifically. And if it happens to be Yucca Mountain, that's good. We'll go there. But if it happens to be New Hampshire with its granite or portions of Vermont with its granite, if that's the best place for it, that's where we're going to put it. So they've changed the approach to finding a place, the one that's not a political decision, let's screw Nevada, to one that's a scientific decision, let's go out and find the best place for it.
Are you still on the line, Greg?
Still on the line, just listening to Arnie.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Arnie, what about the seismic conditions at Yucca Mountain? And what are the standards for the seismic conditions today compared to when the idea for Yucca Mountain was conceived?
Well, as they started the borings in Yucca Mountain, they discovered fractures under the rock that they hadn't anticipated. And actually, about 10 years ago, they actually had a severe earthquake that they had never imagined Yucca Mountain would have. So the data indicated that it wasn't as seismically stable. But the other thing is the mountain was wet. And you think something in the middle of Nevada is not going to be wet, but there was moisture in the rocks that would degrade the canisters that store the nuclear fuel and allow it to get into the groundwater table. So the government came up with this plan to put a titanium cap over these fuel bundles, but not until 100 years from now. And no one had figured out how to build this titanium cap, but they estimated it would be about $10 billion 100 years from now to go back in and fit these things back up as people were moving out of the mountain and sealing it forever. So there was a lot of technology that was on the come. They had no idea how they were going to walk away from this site. Now there is a repository in New Mexico that's storing at 2,000 feet below grade, that's storing some weapons waste. And as a matter of fact, in the Times article that you talked about with Chairperson McFarland, she does talk about the fact that there have been sites that have successfully stored nuclear waste. She doesn't think Yucca Mountain is one of them. As a matter of fact, she was a critic of Yucca Mountain before she became the chair of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So is there a site somewhere in the United States that can store the waste? Likely. But is it Yucca Mountain? Not likely.
Now, Arnie, you were talking about the fuel supply on the top of the nuclear power reactor, yeah, right? And now we're talking about the nuclear waste, which is a totally different thing. That right. I'm correct, right?
That's right.
But they both have the same, they're both made up of the same thing, actually.
Well, they're both connected. At the top of the reactor in that pool is the waste that ultimately has to go into the ground. There's no place to store it above ground because it lasts for something on the order of 250,000 years. So we can't build a structure above ground, and the theory is that you could find a place that's geologically stable enough and you could put it underground until it decayed away. And that process takes about 250,000 years. But it's the same material. It's just new compared to, potentially very, very old when it gets into the ground.
And where does depleted uranium come into that?
Well, depleted uranium is uranium in the earth that we mine is 99% uranium-238 and a little less than 1% uranium-235. You need the 1% to run a nuclear reactor. You don't need the 99%. So they strip out that 1% and they run nuclear power plants with that 1%, but then they still have all this other uranium-238. That's called depleted uranium because the 235 has been removed. That's used in weapons. It's not a nuclear bomb. What it is, it's a metal. Uranium is a metal, and it's pyrophoric. And what that means is that on the M1 tank, for instance, the projectile on the M1 tank doesn't have any explosive in it. It's a depleted uranium casting. And when it hits another tank, the friction of the shell is enough to ignite the uranium. The engineers like it because there's no explosive involved. But the problem is that when it volatilizes, when it burns, it releases atomic size molecules of uranium that get in the soldier's lungs. And so we're seeing now a lot of illness and birth defects in the children of our soldiers that have been in Iraq and the first war, the first Gulf War under the first Bush, and the second Gulf War, and now Afghanistan. And it's because we're using depleted uranium projectiles that, when they vaporize, give off very small particles that wind up being inhaled and then getting stuck in your lungs and ultimately in your liver and other organs.
Arnie, is it true that in order to get depleted uranium, you need to have nuclear power plants?
Or nuclear weapons.
Or
yeah.
nuclear weapons.
You need a process to separate out the 235 from the 238. We used it here in Vermont. The Gatling gun on the A-10 Warthog airplane had depleted uranium bullets. And that Gatling gun was tested on the National Guard Army range up against Mount Mansfield. So the testing of depleted uranium weapons has occurred right here in Vermont.
Arnie, all of this is alarming, and we have a time limit here on our live program, but so I'd like you to touch upon the other lessons that we have not worldwide learned from the Fukushima Daiichi accident.
Okay. Well, the first one was the fact that Mother Nature can and will throw things at us that, if we have anticipated, we didn't want to spend the money to prevent. And that's a broad picture for any of the nuclear power plants, even the new ones. The new ones being built down in Georgia, for instance, are designed for a Richter 6. Well, if there's a 6.5, they won't stand up. So we've convinced ourselves that the worst that's going to happen in Georgia is a Richter 6, and therefore they're okay. I don't think that's the lesson we should take from Fukushima. If we think a 6 can happen, we better design for a 7, because the odds are something can happen that's worse. So I think that's item number one. And the other item is the fuel pool issue, where the utilities, to save money, are storing 35 years of spent nuclear fuel in locations that are nowhere near as safe as they could be. And everybody knows this. This isn't new technology that has to be developed. The canisters that hold this waste are available and readily available on the market. But nobody wants to spend the money to get the fuel out of those pools and onto the ground. The industry will say, well, we're concerned about our worker exposure. But that's a straw man. In fact, over 20 years, the industry has sped up refueling outages. And in the process of speeding up the refueling outages, the workers have become more exposed. Well, the industry has never said, well, we got to slow down and not make as much money. Instead, they've given those workers that worker exposure. Now, when it comes to taking the fuel out, they're suddenly worried about the worker exposure. In fact, it's a straw man to try to save some money. Unfortunately, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has bought that argument. The other issues are, I've said it before, sooner or later in any foolproof system, the fools are going to exceed the proofs. We had that at Fukushima Daiichi, where components that were designed to work with electricity suddenly didn't have electricity. So we didn't have, so then they had to send men down to turn huge valves over 100 times to open a valve. And in the process, they couldn't do it because it was hot, it was radioactive, there were aftershocks, and it was awfully radioactive to begin with. The net effect of all that was that the foolproof systems weren't foolproof, and the buildings blew themselves to smithereens. So there's a lot of lessons that, unfortunately, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission isn't learning.
And the time is running out, isn't it? I mean, between one accident and the next accident, we have no way of knowing how much time we have.
Well, if you listen to the experts, they'll say the chance of an accident is 1 in a million. And if you've got 400 nuclear power plants worldwide, you put 1 million on the numerator and 400 on the bottom, that means there should be 1 accident every 250 years. That's what the nuclear establishment will say. That's what their numbers show. That's what their, what we call probabilistic risk assessment shows. So if you go by their numbers, we should have 1 accident every 250 years. In fact, we've had 5 accidents in 30 years. We've had 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima Daiichi 1, 2, and 3. So we've had 5 meltdowns in 30 years instead of listening to what the nuclear people will say is 1 accident every 250 years.
Well, it seems that the numbers are so abstract, but the people involved, the people who were evacuated so badly from the Fukushima area, are living testimonies to what the disaster really was. And today I saw that they have found butterflies there in that area that are mutants and are very strange. They describe them as very strange-looking butterflies. So we see that this is working upon the birth cycles of our species. So,
you know, that's a great point. There's some good science out about rapid mutations in insects. And insects are relatively radiation resistant compared to human beings. So, yeah, it is frightening. And then, of course, if it's in the human gene pool, it will be, 2 or 3 generations before it completely manifests itself. The butterflies already have a couple generations, and already it's starting to manifest itself. So we won't see the results on the human gene pool for 30 or 60 or 90 years until this works its way through. You're right, it's an abstract number, and they want your eyes to glaze over and say, well, this is so remote, I don't care about it. But in fact, it's a very real, terrible consequence.
And for our viewers, too, you mentioned that there are new nuclear power plants that are actually being built in Georgia, and these were approved to be built after the accident in Fukushima in March 2011.
Well, and that's interesting. There's 4 new nuclear plants being built in the United States. 2 at the Vogtle plant, 2 at the VC Summer plant. And if Wall Street had its way, they wouldn't be built. But you and I are on the hook for the cost of those units. We've signed a loan agreement so that if they default, Vermonters have to pay for that plant down in Georgia. And it's interesting because I testified down in Georgia about I didn't think the plant was safe. And one of these guys from Georgia said, well, you're a Yankee. Why the heck should we listen to you? This is a Georgia plant. Leave us alone. I said, you're right. You're exactly right. I want my loan guarantee back, and you can have that plant. But no, they don't want it that way. They want it so that they get our money for the loan guarantee, but yet the safety issues, they're really not willing to hear us Yankees tell them about.
Arnie, we're winding down in time now, and I just want to put us into the time frame that we are in. right now. This is the 67th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, August 6th. And in some states, like in Vermont and in Connecticut, it is observed as Nuclear Disarmament Day, as to face up to the past, the present, and the future. And people are taking responsibility. And viewers, we can take responsibility by learning from Arnie, an engineer expert in the nuclear field. And awareness is very, very important. But what else, Arnie, are the important things for people who are not in the field and want to learn more about it?
Well, I go back to Tokyo for 10 days next week. And one of the things I'll be telling the people in Japan is that this can be bookends. You can have the beginning of the nuclear era started with Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The end of the nuclear era can be Fukushima Daiichi. And it can bracket the nuclear era if we allow it to. There are alternatives that are cheaper and safer, and we just need the political will to go up against a machine that's well funded and that is influencing our Congress, and it's not in our best interest. Yeah,
and it's hair-raising about the influence on Congress of the lobbying and the corporations, and this is a major problem that really people weren't aware of back at the beginning of the nuclear age, which is going on to 70 years now.
Well, Vermont's Peter Bradford, who lives down in Peru, has said there are no Democrats and Republicans when it comes to nuclear power. There are only pro-nuclear people. Essentially, Congress has been totally co-opted, with the exception of Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey in Massachusetts and a few others, Dennis Kucinich. Just a few congressmen and senators have the courage to fight this lobby, but almost all of them have been co-opted by the money and are pro-nuclear.
Thank you, Arnie. We're winding down now, and viewers, thank you very much for being with us today. I hope that you learned a lot, as I did, with Arnie's conversation here. And until the next time, as we go into a nuclear-free future, may we be more well-informed. May we be aware. And thank you very much, Arnie.
Thank you for having me.
Goodbye for now.